Welcome back to Julie's Village. I'm glad you're here. As a reminder, if you would like to be added to my waiting list or receive more information about receiving consulting or coaching type services for your family and your specific situation, you can email me at juliesvillage@gmail.com. Julie's does not have an apostrophe. Today we're going to continue on with the next eligibility category under which a student can receive special education services under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Again, I'm taking my information from the Idaho Special Education Manual. And in every state, there can be small differences, but for the most part, they're very similar criteria. Today's category is the developmental delay category. This category is unique because it has a time out date, a time by which a student can no longer qualify under this category. It's only from 3 to age 10. By a child's 10th birthday, they can no longer qualify for special education services under this category. The reasoning is that if it is truly a delay, then with intervention, a child should be able to meet the expected benchmarks or have closed the gap between them and their peers by the time that they reach age 10. If they weren't able to close that gap, that means that something else was going on, and that needs to be identified by the age of 10. So looking specifically at this category, if a child is in that 3 to 10 year range, there are specific things that educators and the team is looking for to know if a child does qualify under this category. And they are looking in any of 5 different categories. What they're looking for is if a child is 1 standard deviation below the average in one category, or if they are 2 standard deviations in one category or 1.5 standard deviations in 2 categories. If standard deviations is talking about like that bell curve that shows the average, there's a group, a range that falls within the average. That 1 standard deviation is slightly outside of average. That 2 standard deviations is getting significantly outside of average. If you're more familiar with percentiles, then they're looking for 1 category where a child is at or below the 3rd percentile, or 2 categories where they're at or below the 7th percentile. The categories that a team would be looking at and considering are cognitive, physical, communication, social and emotional, and adaptive skills. So breaking those down a little bit more, the cognitive, they're going to be looking at that discrimination piece, specifically that visual discrimination. The first thing that comes to my mind is Sesame Street. One thing is not like the other. Can students tell? Like if I'm looking at a string of symbols, can I tell which ones are the letters or the numbers? Can I tell that shapes are different or colors are different? And they're going to be looking for reasoning skills, understanding of big, broad concepts, understanding of some of those pre-academic or academic information depending on what age they're at. And then that also just memory and their ability to reason. The next area, that physical piece, they're looking at those fine motor skills and those gross motor skills. And the best way I can differentiate here is when I think of fine motor, I think of just those smaller muscle groups and things like being able to open small packages, button a shirt, use scissors, hold a pencil. Those all fall in the category of fine motor. And gross motor, which is those larger muscles, so the ability to run without falling, to jump, to climb, those are to use stairs, all of those things are things that would be looked at for that gross motor. The next piece is the communication piece, and this is looking at both their receptive and their expressive. So their ability to take in and understand information, and then their ability to then communicate ideas, whether that is through the speech, their ability to form words and to speak that way, and also their ability to use language in a way that makes sense to other people and they're able to understand what they're trying to communicate. That next category of the social emotional is just looking at how well do they interact with their peers, how well do they interact with adults, and how well are they able to regulate their own emotions. And then that last area, the adaptive, is looking at more of those like broader life functioning skills, their ability to toilet, dress, eat, those walking, those are all part of those broader skills. Sorry, not walking, but being able to function within a routine. The walking would still be in that gross motor, but their ability to find their way throughout the building is part of that as well. So their ability to remember where their classroom is and where the main office is, that is a piece that would be looking at that adaptive. So if with all of that information gathered, the team would look and see, is there a significant deficit in any one of these categories or multiple of these categories? And if there is there something else that we already know that would explain what's going on? Is there some other piece of information, a diagnosis that has already been given? If that's the case, then the team needs to default to that information first and consider that category first. If there's nothing else that seems present that's really explaining it, then the team could move forward with developmental delay. But the other piece that they need to look at is, are there any other factors within the child's life that might be impacting one of these areas or multiple of these areas? For instance, is English a second language? Or did they have limited exposure to some of these things that help with those pre-academic skills because of poverty or having to move around a lot, being a more transient student? Or are there other factors that again would explain what's going on here? If that's the case, then again, other areas of help need to be considered, not a special education not special education services on an IEP. Then once that has all been considered, if the team says, yeah, there's really nothing else that we know that's explaining this, but we do see that there's a delay in one or more of these areas that's significant enough to qualify, then they move on with those next two prongs of eligibility. So first they're saying, yes, there is something present. We're going to call it a developmental delay. Can we address that only using accommodations? If that's the case, then the team would create a 504 plan for the child, and they would receive services through that. But if they see that, yeah, there's a significant impact that's adversely affecting their education, and they need more than just accommodations, they do need some specially designed instruction that is specifically targeted at one or more of these areas. That's when the team would say that yes, there is need for specially designed instruction. That means that yes, they meet all of the criteria and they do qualify for special education services under this area. If you have additional information on developmental delay or insights or experiences that you would like to share, I invite you to leave that in the comments. If you have further questions about those topics, please leave that in the comments as well. If there are other topics that you would like to see covered, or other people that you would like to see on this channel, I invite you to leave that in the comments as well. If this information is helpful for you and you feel like it would be helpful to others, I also invite you to like, share, subscribe, and just help get this information out there for those that need it. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.